So for context, for people who don't know and I don't know, haven't seen anything, there are people who assume that Justin Baldoni is very difficult to work with. From a few quotes that have come from Blake Lively saying that there were some creative differences, and it was, did she say the word tension or like just tough in general sometimes to make projects like this happen? But
Yeah.
since that quote has come out, a lot of people have been looking into the press junkets and how they're not doing it together, aka Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. A lot of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman appearances have come in for this movie. So it's been like one side saying smart marketing, cool, like bring your husband in. But you haven't seen anything of Justin Baldoni. And you have these tabloids reporting saying that, Justin made Blake very uncomfortable. It's the Pop Report.
So juicy.
Hey, Miss Ma'am.
Are we recording?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody.
You're like, are we on? Wow.
Like, are we on, or am I about to have a hot mic moment?
I'd love to see you with a hot mic moment. The shit that
I would get my ass into some trouble with a hot mic moment. But listen, whatever I would say on a hot mic, I would say it on not a hot mic, on a cool mic.
Why do they call it hot mics? It's still live,
because it's still live and you don't know that it's live. It's still hot.
I would call it an ugly mic because you get some ugly shit that comes out of people.
Ooh,
it's not hot. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that much. How are you? What's happening?
Good. Staying busy, booked and busy, trying to stay healthy and not break my body.
I get that. I understand.
You just got back from Chicago.
I literally just got back from Chicago. Interviewed a bunch of artists for Love Loud, which is a very cool concert series that brings cool, intimate settings for LGBTQ plus youth and more, just safe spaces at concerts. So it was Chelsea Cutler, Ray Wool, Lux Noir London from RuPaul's Drag Race. It was a good time, but I am back and forth. We worked that venue. I yapped for hours. And also ran around Chicago, went to a Facebook event that was there for a wide receiver who was being welcomed to Chicago.
Fun.
The only wide receiver I know is named Zack Peter. Kidding. Whoop. Nope. That's not the truth. But yeah, I'm very grateful for life to throw a bunch of things sometimes, and I'm like, I just want to be at fucking home. I want to be in my house. I understand those movie stars who are like, as long as I have my dog and I get to sit on the couch, I'm fine. I'm like, I get it. I understand why everyone wears hats now, because sometimes we're too damn tired to put ourselves together. I'm like, what are these celebrities walking on the streets for with bucket hats and shit and just a tee? I'm like, because all they're doing is running around and they wanted to get ready one day.
No, I still look cute when I'm running around. I don't do the hats. I don't hide under a big shirt. I try to pull it together for the most. Listen, I remember the days when I was on. That's why I was like, this year I'm really trying to take as little travel time and as much downtime as I can. And I will say, the workaholic in me is itching, because I'm used to always being on a plane and then another plane and then traveling and going from this event to that event, that this year's a lot slower. And I'm learning how to sit in the calmness of just being present. But I will tell you, even when I was up to catch the 6 a.m. flight, I still made sure I was up at 3 to look cute on the plane, so that as soon as I walked off the plane, I kept it cute. From a plane to an event, club,
very demure,
another club,
very cutesy, very,
classy.
The whole that trend right now on TikTok has taken the fuck over.
Yeah,
even I am saying it all the time now, but I think we should get into today's stories because I don't know if we're gonna fit everything today.
We have a lot to get into today.
Okay, ripping the freaking Band-Aid off. Obviously, we're a little late to the game on this because it happened over the weekend. But D23, people were like, "Were you going to D23? What were you doing?" I'm like, I am not a Disney adult, but I am intrigued on a lot of different updates that came out.
I will say this was probably one D23 I actually would have liked to have attended. I'm not a Disney adult either. I don't have a Disney pass as an adult. I have no intention. the only time I want to go to Disney is, now, like, go to California Adventure because, like, you can drink or, like, get fucked up at, downtown Disney and then get into the park or sneak something in. And I haven't been to Disneyland in a minute, but
Hmm.
this D23 I was excited about because it was like childhood nostalgia
On
come
crack.
back.
On crack.
Yes. Lindsay
Monsters
Lohan
Inc.
won the weekend. I will say that. She looked incredible.
They had a lot of announcements. Like, yeah, people obviously are talking about updates to the parks, like new rides, new things coming, Incredibles announcements. But the big thing that came out was Freakier Friday, which I was there a
Don't love the
Freaky
name.
Friday? Was
I
there a
don't love
Freaky Friday too? Right? Wasn't there?
No,
Or is this there wasn't?
no.
I don't know
There
why
was
I'm
never a
thinking.
Freaky Friday 2.
I think that like watching the clip back, everyone was kind of confused. Like when they said Freakier Friday, they're like, did they say the same thing? So everyone was kind of like, it seemed like taken back from the name. But
Because I think everyone was expecting it to be Freaky Friday 2. Because also, like, if you're gonna like throw back to like that era of nostalgia, you didn't have a different name. It was part 2. Like it was always just 2 or 3, and then like a subtitle. You know, Freaky Friday 2, Nightmare on Elm Street, or something. There was like a footer
or
subtitle.
like
Whereas like
before it got freaky, I don't know. Like
so.
something about that. Like prequel, sequel, but like
Yeah, I
it's
wasn't jazzed about the name. I love that we
no.
finally got like a sneak peek because we had Jamie and Lindsay both come out, make the announcement of the new name. They shared some photos, so we got to see Lindsay and Jamie Lee Curtis in action as Anna and Dr. Coleman. We know that Lindsay's character Anna has, I believe, a 15-year-old daughter in the film. It doesn't appear though that the daughter is part of the swap.
Okay, our predictions are not gonna come true, but whatever. Like it's
I
fine.
always thought there was going to be like a three-way swap between Jamie Lee, Lindsay, and the daughter, but it looks like
Same.
it's only Jamie Lee and Lindsay that are swapping based off of what we've seen so far. But they did reveal that there are a lot of cameos that are going to be coming. Obviously, Chad Michael Murray's back. We've seen him filming some scenes,
Mhm.
but they said that all of the original cast members are back. The music is back. Pink Slip is back. So I'm excited and ready, but it's not coming until 2025, summer 2025.
Yeah, girl, she ain't coming here. Aside from that, I mean, Miss Hannah Montana update, like the words I have not heard spoken from Miss Miley's mouth, saying Hannah Montana, like being Hannah overall, being presented a Disney Legend Award, Miley Cyrus, I think that was the big moment. Everyone having her come back to Disney in general right now. She really poked fun at the moment of her 5 minute plus speech being like, Disney kids are not made in a lab. Here's how my audition tape went. She's like, I'm going to tell you the things that we're not supposed to say. She's like, I'm fucking Miley Cyrus. Like, I'm literally going to tell you what's up. And if they hate it, sorry, like, I'm an icon. She's the Disney legend. So
Yeah.
she talked about her audition tape being sent in. She talked about the show being already shot, and they said, look, it's not working. Like, can you come and audition in person? Like, she went through it all, and she said, look, like, I'm so grateful for everything, for the fans, for the people who were on this production. Like, she fully addressed like her time and it being very positive for her. Like obviously there's been a lot with her family and so much more as of late, but she was like, that made me into like my career of what I wanted to do.
Which is nice to see her have this change of tone because I feel like she was trying to run away from Hannah Montana for so
Hmm.
long when she had the Hannah Montana is dead era and she was kind of like, not wanting to be known for Hannah. And it was nice to see her go on stage and be like, listen, I'm so grateful to Hannah. I'm so grateful to Disney for, giving me this role, but also for being able to have this character that showed me how to be a pop star and that,
Yeah.
catapulted my music career. And, again, like with Freaky Friday and Hannah Montana and seeing Miley and Lindsay back in the mix, like it did bring back so much of that nostalgia that, it made me miss the Disney Channel again.
I know. I feel like for Miley, she also talked about filming the first concert before anyone ever knew her. It was at a mall, and they like needed some footage, for like the intro of the show. But I don't think she was, you know, trying to run away from Hannah. She was like, I'm trying to create, like, I have more talent, like, outside of just this show. I don't want to be known for just this show. And
Yeah.
so I think that battle was like hard. Like, everyone always, compares you to what's going on previously for you, your biggest moment. So she obviously tried to break from the Disney mold, do her own Miley tour. And then when she came out with bangers, people were like, okay, you broke it, but like, who is this now? She refound her voice. She went through obviously like rock era, Chris, the whole 9 yards, but there's too much we have to get into to dive more on Miley Cyrus. I could do that forever, but things coming up we are talking about. We're talking more announcements in what is coming up for Selling Sunset and Real Housewives in New Jersey or New York. Sorry, my bad. I'm an undereducated swine. It's fine. Talking about engagements for like Adele and talking about like, a potential battery arrest for someone. So lots to get into this episode.
Lots to dive into, but we have to start with like the most pressing piece that is on everyone's lips this weekend.
Yeah. Oh my God. I somehow glazed past that. And it's literally in our notes, like, start with this. But have you seen It Ends With Us? Like, do you have interest to see It Ends With Us? Because it is all it's been in my feed is people talking about the cast and behind the
more
scenes.
Than
like,
the movie, people are talking about the cast drama. I do want to see the movie. I know we were invited to the premiere, but it was in New York, and we obviously live in LA. But I want to see the movie, but I want to see it even more so now because of all of this drama that we have going on behind the scenes with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni and like pretty much all of the cast members, because it seems like this Justin is really embracing his character.
So for context, for people who don't know and haven't seen anything, there are people who assume that Justin Baldoni is very difficult to work with, from a few quotes that have come from Blake Lively saying that there were some creative differences, and it was, did she say the word tension, or like just tough in general sometimes to make projects like this happen? But since that quote has come out, a lot of people have been looking into the press junkets and how they're not doing it together, aka Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. A lot of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman appearances have come in for this movie. So it's been like one side saying smart marketing, cool, like bring your husband in. But you haven't seen anything of Justin Baldoni. And you have these tabloids reporting saying that, Justin made Blake very uncomfortable on set. There are other clips coming out also of these quote unquote heated exchanges where I saw a clip of just an Italian man talking with his hands, like, which doesn't seem like a heated argument to me. But there's all these like he said, she said. I'm just confused why the press interviews don't have them together. But what else have you seen? Because you've probably seen there's too many things that have come out about this.
Yes. So I think that's kind of where people first picked up on things, is the fact that he's not doing any public appearances with any of the other cast members. No. It's not even just Blake Lively at this point. He's doing his own press, and then the cast is collectively and individually doing their own press. And anytime any reporter has tried to ask any of the other cast members about Justin, they all kind of dodge the questions. He's kind of answered certain things and kind of alluded to, I know the Daily Mail and Page Six came out with some new reports over the weekend, basically saying that the cast tensions came from the fact that not only is he a producer, but he's also a director on the film, as is Blake Lively. Blake is not the director, but she is a producer. And there were creative differences in terms of how they approached certain scenes, how they approached certain scripts. Blake and I believe, who was the other? Oh shoot!
The cinematographer.
Yes, the cinematographer. I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but they asked for certain like script rewrites, and he was not as open to hearing them out and taking in some of their feedback. And I think like with Blake, it came to, she was fighting hard from my understanding, she was fighting hard from her character and making sure her character's perspective as somebody that is a victim of assaults, she wanted to make sure that, her character's story was told in a certain light, which as the actress, I understand a director dismissing, but as the producer, she's a producer on the film. She does have a say in terms of, story direction and storytelling.
It's also hard to balance that. Like when you are an actor,
Yeah.
and also Blake Lively's directed music videos for Taylor Swift. And so like it is kind of weird when you're put on two different hats of like, I don't agree with this as an actress. And then there's also like, I don't agree with this as a producer. Like these are notes. So you have to have those conversations and figure out like where to pick your battles too.
It seems like a lot of the drama stemmed from post-production. So it wasn't even so much like on set tensions. Like now we're starting to hear about some of the on-set tensions, but it seemed like the issues came with the creative direction of the final cuts that were in the film that it doesn't seem that Blake was in full agreement with. And then I believe Justin has also alluded to Blake behind the scenes trying to pitch herself to be the director of the next film should there be a sequel, which I believe Justin's production company does have first right of refusal over. So there is no sequel as of right now. There is no plans to have a sequel. It's very possible, probably with the success of the film, they will do a sequel. I think everybody went into it like the Harry Potter series, like the 50 Shades of Grey series. You go in with the first one and you have an expectation of it to continue on.
It's a book. I mean, people forget this is a best-selling book. And so there will be new installments. There will be spin-offs. There will be like, so much. I would still like to see it. It's a very, very deep story. It's been very interesting to follow though, because I liked, controversial opinion, A Simple Favor with Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively was one of my favorite movies.
I did too.
People were like, girl. And I'm like, I love the second one is coming out. Blake Lively wore the Britney dress. So a lot of people talked about that. And I feel like people aren't talking about the movie as much. They're talking about like the viral little moments that have been happening around it. So people have also said, we're recreating Barbenheimer with Deadpool and It Ends With Us, even though they're like weeks apart. So I don't know. I think we got more shit to cover. So we'll see what else comes up.
Yeah.
I'm
moving into music news.
You're giving curveballs. Like I fumbled out the gate and here we are going to the next one. So we fumbled last week where we really watched this 30 minutes before. Actually,
not even 30 seconds before we were
5 minutes before we go, oh, the new Katy Perry music video has come out called Lifetimes. Should we watch it? And so we literally start the podcast in our little recordings at home and we watch it together here and we're like, let's talk about this. And we said, okay, you know what? Not going to lie. This music video was not anything quote unquote groundbreaking. It was kind of Harley's in Hawaii-esque, and it was something I feel like, not to be that guy, like I've seen it. It's a fun music video. You'll play it in the background of a club. It's shot in Ibiza or Ibiza, however you say it. And we see Miss Center of a lot of news lately, Katy Perry, just having a good time with her friends. She recreated the viral pizza moment at a club. Like she is just singing Lifetimes, and it just sounds like 2010s to familiar of what we know of Katy Perry. So we both said, nothing too much to talk about this. As of the past 24 hours, news has come up about this music video. And we were like, cool, glad we can circle back to this. But a lawsuit or an investigation is actually happening for the Lifetimes music video. So I don't know if y'all know about Lifetimes, but basically when you obviously go to shoot anything, you have to get permits, you have to get certain clearances done. And so looking at this, the investigation is the Spain, I'm going to butcher this, I'm so sorry, Spain listeners, Balearic Islands. There are certain dunes in certain areas, and if people are like, I don't get it, it's like we have certain areas in the US that are protected. You go to certain beaches and there are restricted areas for wildlife. It's in the Outer Banks. Like I go every year and there's certain areas you're like, don't go there. That's for wildlife. But yeah, nearly a week after the environmental department of the Balearic Islands issued a press release saying that the production company behind it didn't actually obtained proper authorization to film in the protected sand dunes of the Sais Salines Natural Park. Please bear with me. I am so sorry. I do not mean to offend anybody. Um, Basically, I don't know, Zach, if you saw this, but I was like, how does someone not think of clearing? But I don't know what also in this investigation is going to come up, but they're just going to be looking to see if there was any environmental damage to the beach, according to the press release, which was all in Spanish, by the way. So some of our bilingual girls had to help out and translate, but you know, some of us don't speak a lick of Spanish. But yeah, I mean, she's seen in the music video in front of protected ropes for an area. I don't know. I feel like someone's gonna get chewed out on this.
It's really tough when you're doing international shoots because you don't often know all of the regulations. I don't think she's gonna get in trouble for anything. Maybe they'll give her a fine. I don't think she did any damage. I mean, if you watch the music video, she doesn't do much. Like she's on a
No,
beach and she
no.
kind of just dances around. Like to me, I think I said after we watched it, I was like, this reminds me of when Spencer Pratt and Heidi Montag were filming her music video back in what 2005, and they were on the beach and he had the camera and he was like filming her walking down the beach. Like it was such a lackluster
Yep.
music video. It was just very bare bones that I would assume there wasn't a big production value from some of these shots, that you really just need a cinematographer, a cameraman, and Katy Perry running through the streets is really what we were getting. So I don't think there was a high production value.
I just think she's gonna get slapped with something because she was the one
Maybe a
standing in that
fine.
area, like a small fine. But I think the production group is really gonna get the most flack, or like saying, "Hey, like you didn't clear this." She's probably just like, "I was told to stand here, and I didn't.
I
I
don't
was."
think it's going to be that big of a deal.
Who
I think
knows?
they'll get slapped with the small fine and she'll move on from it. I don't even think it's going to affect her that deeply. If anything, it's getting more people to talk about the music video, which is probably more interesting than most people had ideas about the music video because it wasn't that exciting of a music video.
Well, let's move on to some things that are exciting. I want to save some of our weird stories for our next episode because I have a couple, and we have our dear friend
Okay.
Lewis coming in, and I want to get both y'all's reactions on a few. But
Okay.
we have more interesting things that are hitting TV and like streaming platforms. But we have two
Well, wait,
very
you can't beat, we're not done with Music Mayhem yet. We have Adele's engagement.
girl. I am busted. I am so sorry, y'all. I am coming hot off a flight. Adele's engaged.
Adele's engaged, and that's really the only headline. That's all we we really need to say
That's
about
it.
that. We can move
That's
on.
it.
Yeah,
She just said in
Adele's
Munich.
engaged. Congrats. She's gonna really, we're not gonna get another good heartbreak album anytime soon.
No, we don't know. We won't know the details. She's very private. Unless there's an album, we won't know shit.
Yeah,
Music Mayhem officially wrapped.
there we go.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Moving on to our watch or skip. We have
Okay.
two iconic titles that have they both released them within 24 hours, which is surprising. I don't know who said, you know what? I know Bravo's releasing this. I know Netflix is releasing this. Selling Sunset and Real Housewives of New York have each released their trailers for the upcoming seasons. I have watched both. I know Selling Sunset. You know Roni. I don't know shit about Roni, so I can barely say anything. You give me your POV on Roni, and I'll give a POV on Selling Sunset. How's that sound?
Okay,
Okay.
sounds great because I don't know Selling Sunset.
That's what I
Um,
thought.
Listen, I think kind of like what I've been predicting for several months, considering we haven't heard much about Roni. The
I
Roni
thought it was gonna
trailer
get like
dropped.
canceled, maybe. Since this is a
Okay.
reboot, guide me through this.
Yeah. So they had Roni, like the original Real Housewives of New York, for I think 13 seasons. Okay. Original cast members, obviously some people get fired, some people get hired, whatever. But it was true to its arc for
Hmm.
13 seasons. After 13 seasons, they completely scrapped the entire cast and decided to reboot it entirely because there
Why?
were a lot of different reasons. The 13th season got really political,
Mm.
and a lot of people didn't really like it. So that season kind of bombed. There were also some behind the scenes allegations of things that were said that were racially insensitive
I know
between some of
Chicken
the
Foot.
cast members.
That's a different city, but I know that
That's
one.
Dallas.
Yeah, I know that one.
That's Dallas.
Hmm.
But so with Roni, there were allegations that were made. There was an investigation that was done. They weren't able to prove anything. But because of the ongoing investigation, they ended up canceling the reunion, which is the first time they've ever canceled a Real Housewives reunion in Real Housewives history. And this is 13 years into just Roni.
Hmm.
Prior to Roni, they had Atlanta and OC. So
Right.
Housewives has been around for nearly 2 decades. So when it comes to Roni, they were just like, it got too dark, it got too political, it got too controversial. So they just completely scrapped the cast altogether and decided we're going to reboot it with a younger, more diverse cast.
Hmm.
So they tried to do that. And they brought in a younger and more diverse group of women. The show premiered. It didn't have as strong of ratings as the original, and the new women. I think it's really challenging to recreate a model that was already successful with new players because the game of reality television is very different.
Yeah,
14
I know
years
that
ago,
much. And when the
yeah,
new season came out, everyone's like, I don't know about this. And I'm like,
yeah.
okay, I won't watch.
Well, I think because 14 years ago, people didn't really know what Real Housewives was. So these women came and they were just unapologetically themselves. Whereas I feel like now, especially if you're casting a younger group of women, a lot of them are influencers, and influencers are very curated. And so they're very self produced. So there
Hmm.
wasn't a whole lot of theatrics that we were used to with Housewives with this reboot. So now this reboot is into its second season. So this is technically, I think, season 15 because they continued on. So last season was considered 14. This is considered 15. Trailer dropped. My reaction, and from what I've seen on social media, the reaction is it's a whole lot of nothing. Like a lot of the trailer focused on pigeons, which was kind of an analogy that I don't think made sense to a
Strange.
lot of people.
They
I
try to
don't know
make
if
it like
there's
mysterious, and I was like, pigeons.
I don't know if there was like some sort of inside joke on pigeons, but there wasn't. It wasn't clear to somebody like me that's not a New Yorker that is a Housewives fan, you know. And so my thing is, it's like when you're focusing too hard on trying to sell us on this pigeon analogy or pigeon pivot, that tells me that there's a whole lot of nothing in the content. And if you watched it, there was a whole lot of nothing that we got from the show altogether. So there, people aren't. I mean, the ratings already weren't strong going into season 2. I didn't hear a lot of buzz while they were filming. Now that we're into it, I think the biggest thing that people were most excited about was the addition of Rebecca Minkoff because she
Right.
is the Scientologist, and so people thought, "Oh, we're gonna dive into Scientology." But from what we see in the trailer, there's a scene where it
She's
was
like, what did you
Rebecca
say?
Minkoff. It was Rebecca Minkoff and it was Jezel. And Jezel, I think, asks Rebecca, like, what do you want us to say if people
Right.
ask us about Scientology? And she says, say no comment. So it seems like we're not going to get into the Scientology of it all this season.
I mean, I wonder how much money she's made to Scientology, like issued out.
Oh, I think it was reported that she's given a lot of money to Scientology.
Anyways,
So
wow.
what's going on with selling Sunset? Other coast, West Coast.
Okay, so for the girls who get it, they get it. People have been saying Selling Sunset has been going down a little bit.
Ever
Like,
since Christine Quinn left.
correct. I have interviewed, I have met some of the cast members. I still watch the show. I still enjoy it. I love the home aspect. I love seeing new homes. I've interviewed cast members of Selling OC. Um, Selling OC, in my opinion, is the VH1 version of the franchise. Like you get the old school fights, the younger crowd, the
Yeah.
demo, like you really pull them in. But everyone's here for the houses. And obviously, season over season, it has been just more like about the cast members, the drama, the glitz and glam. So before cameras picked up, or around the time cameras were picking up, Chelsea from the cast had filed for divorce with her husband. So Chelsea of the group, she is a newcomer. She's been around for like 2, 3 seasons. About I'm trying to remember what season we're on. Like, but well, obviously we're in like around the 5 to 7 seasons total range, and so it's been a ride for her. There have been people who have said she's coming kind of strong, but there are, it seems, moments in this where Nicole, one of the cast members who has been around the agency but never got any airtime, She was considered for the original cast. I guess it just didn't work out. But she and main co-star Chriselle Stiles have had beef, and Chriselle has released screenshots of when it didn't happen in the beginning, but then she got called on later for the show, saying that Nicole is very attention-seeking and grabbing and da 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 da. So the entirety of the cast, it seems, this current season is focused on divorce. It is focused on relationships. There also was Christine Quinn getting a divorce as of late that obviously made some big headlines, but we don't know if that will be touched on in the season.
Probably not, because she's not on the show anymore.
Correct. People still do want to see her come back.
I do. She was the only thing interested. Her, and then when Chriselle became a lesbian. Well, my mom became a lesbian later in life. It happens.
Turned a leaf. So the thing is, I interviewed Mary before. Mary is sweet. Mary is very nice. I think that when all of these divorce announcements were going on, everyone was very lip tight about Christine and about Chelsea. Like, no questions, no whatsoever. I think it seems we probably will get insight of what was going on in the season. And so they probably wanted to obviously keep it tight for personal reasons, which I could understand. And then for it just being on the show. We don't know too much otherwise of what they're doing. In previous seasons, we got, like the cast is going down to Cabo, and like there's a Cabo San Lucas office, and there's been intermingling with the OC office. They opened a San Diego office as of late, but we don't know if there's a spinoff of San Diego coming up. So they tried to do like a Miami or a Florida. I don't remember what it was, but it did not do very well, and they canceled after like 1 or 2 seasons.
Oh, that's right. Selling Sunset. Was it Selling Sunset Miami? Right.
It was, yeah, Selling Miami or something.
Selling Miami.
I don't know, girl. And then there was Buying Beverly Hills. There's so many things that have been like a real estate show, but Selling Sunset obviously is still going. People are wondering at this point, like, what's going to keep it forward. It's the same thing.
Selling Tampa.
Selling Tampa. I was like, what are we talking about? But
we don't really need to sell Tampa, do we?
I think it's also because it wasn't.
Buying Beverly Hills wasn't Selling Sunset, though. That was
but people compared it because it was very selling or buying. But the Oppenheim market of the shows have been doing really well in the franchise. I'm interested to see if there is going to be something about San Diego.
Yeah. Well, they just added, what was it? Making it Manhattan, moving Manhattan, something. The Ryan Serhant show.
I heard it did not do well. I heard it's not great. For those who love $1 Million Listing and like all of those shows that he was on, people are like, it's not exciting.
Owning Manhattan, that's what it was called.
Mm-hmm. He is very talented. He is great. He's a big personality. But yes, people I know who I'm close to, they're like, you know what? It's just not my favorite.
Well, because I feel like most people aren't watching these shows for
homes,
houses.
I am.
Right.
I live here, but I'm like, I want to see the homes that I can't afford.
Yeah, but I feel like Selling Sunset has become more about the drama amongst the inner workings of the team members rather than it is about the exuberance of the shows. Like one of the $1
Million Listing cast members also said, he was on Bravo. Was it Josh? I think he was on Watch What Happens Live, and he was asked, like, do you watch Selling OC? And he goes, I only watch shows with licensed real estate agents. So there have also been like,
it was not Josh Altman. I think it was, shoot, what is his name? I can see his name. People keep wanting me to date him. What is his name? Yes, he's the rich one. Yes. What is his name? What is
I'm gonna just let you like cry.
$1 Million Listing, Los Angeles. It's not Josh Altman. It is. Shoot, what is his name?
It is Josh Flagg. Josh
Flagg. There you go.
Oh, I'm like, I don't know this, but like I know this at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I don't know why his name was blanking.
I do not know much of Bravo. I do not know much of those shows. I know the quotes. I know the big things that have come out of it. But people have their thoughts on Selling Sunset. So that's where we're gonna tie it in a bow. We'll let everyone think of what they're wanting to watch, but we have a little while till like what, September and October for both of those shows.
Yeah, Roni comes back October 1st, and then September is when Selling Sunset returns.
Yeah.
We got time.
Shifting gears, we have
Yes.
some bit of stuff that's happened online that's very serious. It's very sad. Also, people have taken a lot of opinions about this, but I'm sure you've also seen what's been going on with Chris Olsen, who is a very prominent, internet personality. And
TikTok star.
yes. So people have been following Chris Olsen over the years. His, close relationship with Meghan Trainor. Chris is very young. Chris has been online for quite some time.
26.
Yes. He's been online for quite a few years, but as of late, nude photos have
Most
been
notably from dating Ian Pageant, who's a dancer. They were both
okay.
TikTokers.
Okay.
They were a hot gay couple on TikTok. People fell in love with them as a couple. They broke up.
Right.
Now he's single.
So Chris has been making videos online. He's got a good prominent following. And as of this week, he had a moment where he's like, I have photos that have been leaked, and they consistently have new photos that come out of me. People obtain them from somewhere, but it was in a very dark period of his life where he didn't know as much and he was very young. So to give background, Chris Olsen stated that when he was 19, he did take photos with a photographer, but it was unbeknown to him where those photos were going. And so this photographer took these photos and put them onto a subscription-based platform and solicited it to people. And that was something Chris at the time said he had no idea. He didn't understand, like, saying the word no, like, is really hard at times when you're put in predicaments of like, where do you stand? I want to say something, but I don't know how to like take back the power in this right now. Chris, has been getting a lot of comments of, well, you took naked photos. What did you expect? And people saying, okay, like, you have these nudes that come out. Like, these are the choices you made.
Well, let's take it back to before that. So
correct.
he went on social media,
Mm-hmm.
and part of his content is after he broke up with this other TikToker, Ian, who's more of a dancer. They were a couple. They broke up. They started doing their individual content. A lot of his content was focused on, he would create like really uplifting,
Mm-hmm.
funny videos, dance videos with like Meghan Trainor, who he's now really close with. And then one of his other shticks was like these coffee videos where he would be like, I'm going to buy coffee. And he would like travel to different states and try different coffees from different cafes. So over the weekend, he started going online and talking about some of the bullying that he's been facing on TikTok,
Yes.
where a lot of people are poking fun at his looks, poking fun at his content, poking fun at the fact that he's a gay man, whatever. He gets a lot of backlash on social media, as many of us do. Someone who gets plenty of backlash myself on social media. I can relate. And part of his content is to be very vulnerable, be very open, be very transparent, and also add a lot of humor to make people feel good. So this started with him saying that it was really challenging for him to receive a lot of negative comments when all he's trying to do is put out positive content to make people feel good. And he didn't understand why there were so many people that were triggered by that would leave such nasty comments about his looks, about, his personality, whatever they wanted to comment on. He was getting this overwhelming response of negative comments online. So he kind of had a moment where he was breaking down, he was crying, he was, so much so that even Meghan Trainor and Meghan Trainor's husband started to go online as well. They started creating videos themselves talking about how, they did it in a very cheeky, funny, humorous way. I don't know how I would feel if I was having a moment on social media and my friends decided to go on social media and make funny videos about it, about like, don't mess with my friend or I'll beat you up. But so they tried to come to his defense and be like, don't post negative things about him. Like, Chris is a cool guy, whatever. Then this led to a conversation where Chris then opened up this conversation saying that in recent months, there's been content that has resurfaced online that is from his past that he does not feel comfortable being shared online, and he doesn't like that is being shared online. And so he issued a statement I believe it was on Sunday,
Monday.
maybe Monday, he released a lengthy statement addressing all of this. And so it does stem to back when he was 19 or 20. Part of Chris Olsen's story is he was, he claims he had a very strong addiction to alcohol, so he ended up going to rehab. He is now sober. He became sober when he was 19, and since then has not touched alcohol and kind of has turned a leaf.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, he was participating in a variety of photo shoots with a variety of photographers. He has acknowledged this in his statement that
there's no money involved. Like it was just a
they were
growing
thirst
relationship.
traps. Yes, they were, as he describes, thirst traps, which are photos of him without his shirt, photos of him in his underwear. A lot of gay guys
Yeah,
do
and
that
people
in
have done it all
LA,
the time.
in West Hollywood. Many of them do that. He says that he was participating. Listen, I've gotten DMs about photographers wanting me to do these photo shoots. I've always declined. However, there are photographers out there, many of them very notable on Instagram, that take these risque photos of gay men, and there is an exchange. There often is not payment, but there's an exchange where if I can post these photos on my Instagram account, you can post these photos on your Instagram account. So Chris was participating in multiple photo shoots. He's now come out, now that there was one of those photographers that took these photos and published them on a Patreon. Patreon is hidden behind a paywall, so people pay to gain access to this content. He took some of, I believe, a variety of photos that he has taken, including Chris Olsen, and has put them behind his Patreon paywall. People then took those photos, screenshotted them, and shared them. Now, this has been a conversation with, OnlyFans, Patreon, whatever memberships. I have a YouTube membership where I have content that is hidden behind a paywall, and that has been an issue amongst many podcasters where people take content that's behind a paywall and they share that publicly. Right. Now, that is illegal because that is copyrighted content that you're not allowed to share. However, people took screenshots of these nude photos of Chris Olsen that were shared online. In addition to that, there was also webcam photos because it appears that Chris Olsen was also doing, he was jerking off on camera. He was showing his butthole on camera. He was a cam boy, essentially. There are tons of websites, Chatterbait, like all these different websites where you can be an adult performer and live stream to people on the internet. Chris Olsen was apparently also participating in live streams on the internet with this adult content. So in addition to these photo shoots that he was participating in and these live streams that he was doing all at the same time, all post-rehab, he's made it clear that he was sober at the time, but he says that he was in a very vulnerable state coming out of rehab, and he was using his body in a more promiscuous way that was giving him some sort of validation because at the time he was working out, he was really focusing on his fitness, and he was feeling confident. So now that these photos have resurfaced, and now that this footage of his live streams from a few years ago have resurfaced, he's now saying that sharing these things are non-consensual, and he's putting it in the category of revenge porn. Now, revenge porn has become a big topic lately. We have the Tom Sandoval, Rachel Leviss lawsuit that's ongoing with Ariana Madix about revenge porn. We have, recently the Love Island cast member whose butthole was shown on the internet because his phone was given to someone that he claims, he trusted, and then they took intimate content, published it online. We've seen this pattern of people taking these intimate photos, videos. We saw the Paris Hilton sex tape, the Kim Kardashian sex tape. James Charles has accused people of trying to do revenge porn. So this is something that has happened a lot and has become a bigger conversation. The revenge porn laws stemmed originally from a website called Is Anyone Up, which was created by a man named Hunter Moore, who was essentially created a blog where people could submit intimate photos of their partners, of their friends, publish them online, and then they would be shared. This then opened up a bigger conversation with this term revenge porn, where people would leak intimate photos with the sake of revenge. So there had to be an element of some sort of public shaming of that, and the photos or content had to be intimate and was expected to remain private. Now, that has since evolved beyond just publishing on the internet, because there have been cases throughout the U.S. where there were like nudes that were shared amongst high school or college students that were shared from cell phone to cell phone and sent to multiple people, which has also become a bigger conversation with revenge porn as well. So the term revenge porn has evolved over the years, but now Chris Olsen is claiming that the circulation of these photos with this photographer are considered revenge porn, as is these live streaming videos are also considered revenge porn because he's not giving consent to them being shared. Now, the conversation gets a little dicey because technically, well, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? 'Cause I have a lot of thoughts on this,
things.
and
there's some things he said in his statement, and then there's obviously like you don't know until you're in it situation too. In his statement, he said like, he was using and he was in a bad mindset, even though he was getting sober and like his mindset.
No, he was sober at the time. He said he was sober. This was
Right.
post rehab.
So he said, his mind still was like, you can't just change some decisions overnight. He's like, I'm not on alcohol, but he's like, I didn't know what was going on. And so this incident with this photographer, he said, as soon as we started, he said, take everything off. Like he didn't want to have to go too much into detail, but he said, this reminded me of an essay incident I had previously. So it brought up a lot and it brings up so much. And when you're in those situations, you don't know, and you're really caught off guard, and you're like, okay, like how do I make just of this situation? It is really hard sometimes just to be like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel great about this. There's someone taking photos of you that you've already agreed upon, and you feel like you kind of like lost your power. But yeah, he's obviously talked about how this situation is very difficult for him of just his past experiences. But now you have a lot of these different things that have come up, and he's stated, like anybody, we've all done it. We've all taken a photo of ourselves somewhere. Maybe it's on our phone, it's on something. And it's like,
I think the challenge with this photographer, though, and in reading his statement, I think the part that for me was contradictory is he did sign a release form for this photographer, and he did go into this knowing that these were going to be risque photos. He was going in there, and as he described, he was going to take thirst trap photos, which he has done with other photographers. I understand that this first time experience, he felt pressured to completely take his clothes off, and there was that pressure that came from that photographer. But he continues to acknowledge that he continued to participate in multiple photo shoots with this same photographer and continue to take his clothes off multiple times moving forward, in addition to doing this with other photographers. So when you have done it once, when you've done it twice, I understand that maybe it's a little uncomfortable. You're signing releases. You don't really understand. I mean, I think when you sign a release, you kind of understand that you're signing away some sort of rights. But when you're engaging in a photo shoot, this is like saying I was 19 years old. I went to pose for Playboy. I agreed to take these risque photos, and then the photos were published, and they were published that one time. I never thought that somebody would take that old issue of Playboy and recirculate those photos again.
There's definitely like people, including him and others, who have said, I was in a bad like mental like headspace. Like I was not making clear decisions. I was not making best judgment, and like I have been wanting these to be removed or taken down. Like we've had celebrities say that. We've had people say, look, like I made a stupid decision and I had no idea where this would take, or I was young. It was so long ago. I think he's coming from that perspective. And like,
I don't. And I think if he were coming from that perspective, I would understand a little better, because I feel like he's leaning more into, because he's also saying that not only is this experience, and I'll explain why I feel so strongly about this, but he's also leaning into feeling like this was an SA, which, is kind of a more PC way of saying it's a certain type of assault that's of an explicit nature. He's referring to this specific incident as that as well. And he does reference there was a time where there was an SA situation that happened when he was in high school. Now, I've heard him speak about that situation, and I have deep empathy for that, and I'd never want anybody to go through an experience like that. But when it comes to something like this, because it also relates, he's conflating, or he's mixing in these photos that he agreed to take and he signed releases for and continue to participate in these photo shoots for and continue to publish these photos on his Instagram, for which he says gave him his initial following, because he said that that's what gave him his initial popularity, was by posting these risque photos. So when you go into a photo shoot where it's going to be an underwear shoot, that alone already puts you in risky territory. I understand him saying he was in a vulnerable time. And I think at 19, 20, 21 years old, like that is a more
Yeah.
vulnerable time and you're more impressionable. However, when it then relates to him at the same time going on the internet and being a cam boy and live streaming himself, jerking off, bending over, showing his butthole, all of these different things, and this is happening at the same time, in this community, there are so many gay men that seek their validation out through their bodies. I understand that. This was a form of him trying to discover himself, explore himself, gain validation, whatever it was. I completely understand that. At the same time, I also understand that we do dumb shit. We get bad tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
We, send nudes to people we shouldn't have sent them to. We make mistakes. And it's okay to say, hey, I did something in the past that I'm not proud of. I made a mistake. I have to take personal accountability for the choices that I made because this wasn't a one-time thing. He repeatedly live streamed himself on the internet and he repeatedly participated in these photo shoots where he repeatedly signed release forms. Now, I think what the photographer did by taking those photos and waiting until he's famous and putting them behind a paywall, I think that that's disgusting and I don't support the photographer at all. But however, I do think there needs to be personal accountability for choices that we make when we do something that we don't like. I don't love that he's saying that people sharing these photos or this being a conversation is traumatizing for him because I think that there are people that experience SA and I think that there are people that are truly traumatized by their experiences. And I think that when we put them into a category like this, where this is really just somebody that made some choices that they're now embarrassed. There's a difference between being embarrassed by your choices and being traumatized. And I think we have to be careful with the words that we use because there are actual victims out there that deserve the respect of not having their experiences diluted by somebody that willingly chose to participate in this and is not taking much accountability for their actions. And yes, there are moments in his statement where he says, well, I didn't say no. I continued to participate in these photo shoots, but I didn't say no. That's very different
he said that
from
in a
somebody
place, though, at
being...
the same time, like, we don't know what it's like to be in those situations when you're at really, you don't have like
We
time for
don't, but I
trusting
don't,
your
Andy. We don't, but I don't have sympathy when there are actual people that are put in positions where there are people of power that take advantage of them. And there are women in our country every single day that are taken advantage of by men that
I
are in
agree.
power. There are gay men that are taking advantage of a men that are in power, and they truly don't have a voice. Where not so much did they just participate in something and not say no, but they truly felt powerless. I don't want to take that experience away from him, but when he's continuing to engage in this behavior and then wants to, I think we've gotten into this culture of victimizing ourselves without taking personal accountability because both things can be true. We can be in positions where we can take accountability, but also know maybe there are situations where I didn't have as much control. Trust me, there are plenty of situations when I was that same age that I can now go and talk about what a victim I am, or I can claim that it was SA or whatever it is. But there's also a level of personal accountability that we need to have. And I think it's very dangerous when we engage in certain behaviors. Now, he was sober at the time, so he can't say that he was under the influence of anything. He was young and impressionable, and that does factor in. I think the photographer has definitely taken advantage of the fame that he has now, but you can't negate that these were choices that he made. He didn't think the consequences through. This wasn't 15, 20 years ago before we knew what the internet was. This was recent. This was what, 5 years ago?
At least from what I've seen, he did say he was still using at the time for some of these, and like just because you're fresh.
He said that he got clean at 19.
Well, at least from what I've seen, but the thing is too, like,
I watched his video and I read his statement, and he made it very clear that he was sober at the time of all of this.
So at least
he was not using drugs; he was an alcoholic.
So at least from my POV, obviously the whole thing is it's very sad. I think
it's nuanced.
It's very disheartening to watch and like have someone traumatically thinking about like these photos are going to be constantly out there. He said, stuff in the past like
there's a difference between trauma and
finish.
embarrassment, and when we inflate those statements.
But he said in the past,
words,
like I have supportive people, I have supportive, everyone around me, but to have these constantly come up more and more and more and more, plus what people say about you online, he's like he hit a breaking point. I think there are different situations compared to where he's at versus other people. I very much like agree. I think it's like it's disheartening to see, And I think overall, like, I have been in situations that are adjacent to this of like you are working
Yeah.
with someone in photos and they try to get you to do more and you feel very uncomfortable and you're very young and you're like, you know what? I felt like all of my words and choices were taken away. I can understand that part. I think thankfully it didn't go any further. Obviously, he has like situations that were like this reminds him of that X situation, like of SA and more. There are people who went through like really bad stories with photographers. And you know,
Yeah.
there are people who online say, look, like he was in a very dark time. There's a recent gamer who also had a video or a couple videos come out of him, and he's like, look, I was in a dark space. I was not in a really good time, but it happened. Like,
Anybody can say that, though.
right.
Anybody can say, I was in a fragile state, therefore I'm not taking any accountability. I mean, you've done intimate or not intimate, but you were just on Instagram in your underwear. You've been in situations that are similar. I think it's easier for me to say you can very easily say no. And sometimes you do feel pressured and you do things that you maybe wish you didn't later.
Oh
But the
yeah. I
fact
mean,
is,
I've
this was
personally worked with
repeated.
photographers and
Like
like
this is
the
and
second
did you continue to work with them in your underwear and continue to sign release forms after that?
I will say I once worked with a photographer and the first time where the person tried to push a little more, the second time I was like I had a firm stance, but
Yeah.
it took me going home and having that to realize, okay, that I got really uncomfortable. Like people really push your boundaries, but you're like,
Yeah.
how do you communicate it? How do you also say like we're doing something that's mutually beneficiary, but you're pushing it more? And in my situation, I was young, but
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. It's unfortunate to have pictures still shared of you like online consistently. Like when you're like, look,
For sure.
I don't know what's going to happen with this situation. I
For
feel
sure. Just like there are plenty of women that signed away the rights to take nude photos in Playboy, and they have
mhm,
to live with those
yeah.
decisions. And those women don't have the luxury of being able to go on the internet and claim revenge porn because we slut shame women in our culture.
Yeah.
We don't give them the same grace. I think that this is very dangerous territory to turn yourself into a complete victim without taking any sort of accountability for your own actions. And at the same time, I think I would take this a lot more seriously if people like Megan Trainor weren't then making funny videos about it on TikTok to like, don't be mean to my friend or I'll defend. Like that to me, like if I was going through some shit and I was on the internet and you saw me freaking the fuck out and
Yeah.
having a moment, the last thing I would expect you to do is to go on the internet and make content and make levity of it. I would expect you to get on the phone, to show up at my apartment and to be like, hey, what can I do as a real friend to be here for you right now? Making funny videos to make levity of it makes me feel like it's not that serious because he must not really be going through it behind the scenes if his friends are making cheeky content about it rather than using this as. And here's the thing, what we do with instances like this is we empower young people to say, hey, there are going to be instances where you're going to be uncomfortable, but you know what? You do have power. You can say no. And we use these as teachable moments, not moments to make ourselves a victim. Not to say that, I just think our culture is leaning too much into the victimhood without the personal accountability. And I think the more we take personal accountability, the more we can use these as moments of empowerment to teach other people to find their power so that they don't find themselves in situations like this.
Yeah. I want this
But
to be
it's
a lot
very
of
easy to rewrite history. Holly Madison has done it recently as well. She was on The Girls Next Door. She posed for Playboy. She was Hugh Hefner's longest running
mhm.
girlfriend outside of his wife. And now her narrative has shifted that now she has received a later in life autism diagnosis. And therefore, that somehow makes it seem like Hugh Hefner took advantage of her in some way. And again, now she's turned herself into a chronic victim without taking personal accountability for the decisions that she made as a young woman. And I think this situation with Chris Olsen is another one of those situations. I think it's a talking point that really opens up our eyes to a lot more of these discussions, but that's also where we continue to really figure out what is truly revenge porn.
Yeah.
Is somebody circulating old videos that you decided to stream on the internet if I decide to rub my dick out on the internet and people decide to share that at some point, I have to take accountability
I
for
think the
that.
word
I
revenge porn is
went
a
on
hard,
a
it's a
public.
hard, like, that is a very line in the sand that gets drawn. So I hope this becomes a very teachable moment of like how people
I hope
can
so
feel
too.
like, okay, I don't know how to say no. It's really hard to say no in some situations and you get pushed and pushed and pushed. Like, how can I take control of whatever's going on? And hopefully Chris can take control too of whatever's going on for whatever else is probably going to ensue after this, and he can just carry on and teach
And
people.
we have to be allowed to have these conversations. I think when we throw out the term essay or we say that we're traumatized by something, again, I think there's a difference between being traumatized and being embarrassed. But I think when we throw out these big terms, it becomes very dangerous because then there's no conversation. We're not allowed to pry into that further. We're not allowed to discuss it further. And unfortunately, when you choose to put yourself out there, again, we put ourselves, listen, I put my life out there fully, completely, and I take all the heat that comes with it. And as somebody that is very firm in the opinions that I have, I've received a lot of shit on the internet. And there have been moments where I've fallen into that and I'm like, and I call my friends and I'm like, I can't believe I'm getting ripped apart on Reddit for this stupid thing that I said. And my friends are the ones that don't make TikTok videos, but they check me and say, listen, Zach, I get it. You're feeling your feelings right now, but you also have to understand you had an opinion that you stated was a strong opinion. You put
Mhm.
that on the internet, and the internet opens you up to a whole new beast.
It's
If
there.
you don't like that, you need to take yourself out of that environment. Same thing with like Rachel Leviss. She talks about how traumatizing it is to be part of Vanderpump Rules, yet she constantly inserts herself into that conversation and constantly discusses the show on her weekly podcast. So it's like you can't, like, there needs to be personal accountability, and there also needs to be a time when you say, I walk away from this world because it's too much for me.
Mhm. Well, we've hit the hour mark. Is there anything else you want to cover before we dip? I mean, like we've obviously broken some of the things we get into on this obviously are like we try to cover all angles, especially this Chris story is like it's sad that this happens.
It's layered.
There's so many different layers, there's so many things that go on. You know, some of the discussion points obviously hit other topics that we have covered too, like you mentioned. Like I think it then comes down to kind of like a legal analysis at times, unfortunately, of what actually is X term. And it is so sad to see like places like TikTok then becoming this like, here's my fucking opinion. But it's like we feel sad for people a ton, like consistently. It's like, how do we then, we learn from recipes on TikTok. We learn how to clean our fucking like laundry. Like, how do we learn to just be able to stand up for ourselves? How do we learn to like be more confident? And like, we bring humor to people, but it's also like the internet has a way to bring someone up and make someone feel at their lowest at the same time. So it hopefully is just all teachable lessons. I mean, other stuff we have is just silly bitch couple news, which I feel like we can save some of it for like,
We have Lewis in studio
we have
this
Lewis
week,
in
and we'll
studio.
dive into all of that
The
with him.
breakdancer from the Olympics, though, she is taking a much needed
Gun.
vacation. Reagan, she is taking a much needed vacation. I think we all need a much needed vacation. I think I want to get into her a little more after what comes and the dust dissipates and we give a full.
Yeah, because now there's like people are digging into her history and her past, and they're questioning certain things and how she even made it to the Olympics. I have a lot of opinions about that one too.
I know there's a lot of opinions at the end of the day. Like, I think we all just want everyone to do well and do their best. And like, we just
Yes.
hopefully have history not repeat itself sometimes. That's when, you look at the Brooke Schofield stuff and more things coming up of like, I didn't do this. You did. How do we own up? How do we be better?
Yeah.
And how do we just like make
And
sure
that's all we can do,
that's all we can do is
and I think we have power as people that live our lives on the internet. And that, listen, here's the thing: when we put our lives out there, we're going to get a lot of support, and we're going to get a lot of people that love and adore us for being ourselves. But at the same time, there's the double-edged sword of it as well,
people are
and
gonna
people
love you,
are
people are gonna
going
hate
to
you.
have commentary, right?
Yeah.
And I just think we have to understand that there's a responsibility that comes with the things that we say online and with the parts of our lives that we put out there. And we don't always get to control that narrative, unfortunately. And we don't always get to control people's opinions of us. And I don't think that it's fair that we try to do that. All we can do is try to put our best foot forward, live our lives as openly, authentically as we can, and and, hopefully be good examples and good lessons for people in the process of being ourselves and putting our lives out there.
Wow. I'm fried. Like this was a
You've had a
long
long weekend.
I've had a long weekend. This is a very long, very important episode. But yes, if you have not subscribed to the podcast, now is a great time to do so. Obviously, we love to hear any feedback of anything going on. If you have any opinions or, things that you can post, and if you obviously have any resources, we will attach them to this episode for YouTube and more for anyone who's looking for any support or resources and more. Very important for those who are looking for resources like RAINN and more. We'll put the suicide prevention hotline in this as well. But yes, very important stuff we tackle. It's not always silly bitch fun pop culture news. It's like really stuff that we meet some of these people. We do our jobs. We interview some of these people. Sometimes at work, like at my job, like we sometimes say, hey, like I know this person and this sucks. Like I don't feel comfortable covering this, but like we work in news. Like news is news. So yeah, it is sometimes hard to refrain from like putting your personal relations into stories and things, but like this is also it's news is real. You have to tell the truth of what's going on.
And if you put your life out there publicly, there's a chance it's going to be part of the news.
Selling Sunset about to be real.
Christine Quinn, bring her back.
That's all I'm saying. All right, well,
her life has unfolded, and I know everybody wants to see it now.
Oh my goodness. All right, well, we'll catch you all in another episode, and stay safe, and we'll chat with y'all soon. Bye.
Bye, guys.